Hey there. Today we're looking at diagnosing VLAN and trunking and access port issues. Or maybe you don't even have an issue, but you want to check and see how something is set up or working, especially if you're following in behind somebody that maybe uh, you're fixing an issue or changing something the way it's working, but you're not 100% sure how it was set up before. Maybe you didn't do it. Okay, so this is the topology that we have going on here. I have switch 4 to be a hub of a wheel. We've got some PCs on the wheel, and we also have several ports here. In Cisco terminology, switch 1, switch 3, 2, and 5 are all access switches, and switch 4 would be a distribution switch. Now, I've kind of got a hybrid model going now because I have PC 1, 2, and 3 attached to the switch 4 also. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the uh, console. I'm going to pull up the console for switch 4. And let's start in on some of the show commands that we can look and use to find these problems, to see these problems. So get your notebook ready, start writing these things down, take some notes, and here we go. All right, so the first one is the show IP interface brief command. We've used this a lot of times, and it's just tough to beat. So we've got this one here, and it shows if a link is up or not. And an important thing to show in here is whether or not your VLANs are active as interfaces. So in this case, we have VLAN 1 active as an interface, but if I use my next command, show VLANs brief, then we can see that I've got VLANs 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. 500 having no IP, or excuse me, no interfaces attached to it, and yet these others do. In fact, default VLAN 1 has not one but 2 ports in it right there. So if I issue the previous command, show IP interfaces brief, what I need to understand is that I don't have an interface set up for 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500. So even if they have IP addresses, well, you can't have IP addresses on them unless there's an interface. Anyway, so there we are. So here's another command that's handy, which is show run. And we've used this one before, but now we're looking at the running config on Fast Ethernet 1 through whatever. It's important to note that these are the commands that you have successfully entered into the switch. Now, you may have entered more than one, and sometimes we just get to where we're hammering away on commands, and that's fine. But sometimes you hammer away so fast that you don't notice a command didn't get through. So if it didn't go through and an error came up and you just kept going and you entered another interface or whatever, and that command didn't go, this is the place where you're going to see these commands were successfully entered into the switch. But these aren't the only settings that are on can be on an interface. If I issue the show command and interfaces and a question mark, look at all the other possibilities that there could be on those interfaces. And if I issue this command, show interface fast Ethernet 02, it doesn't matter what interface it is, there's a lot of stuff right here that can be set. All of these things can be changed with those other commands. But until I issue a command to do one of these things, for example, duplex or speed, those commands are not going to show in the show run. Okay. Sometimes the show run is a lot of information, and you're really trying to be able to look at that at the same time. So you can look at an interface worth, show run interface fast Ethernet 06. Now I'm just looking at one interface worth of running information. Let's go back and look at a different interface. Okay, there we are. That's an access port on VLAN 100. Now, I didn't want to skip over 6. I did something kind of strange here. I put switch port mode dynamic, and that makes the switch allow for the switch to be in, or the switch port, to be either in access or trunk mode. It's a temporary intent, I think. It does work. It works like it's supposed to if you read up on it, but until 6 decides what mode it's going to be in, it's a little tough to see what it is. Okay. Whereas if I pick, say, 8, no, let's use gigabit. See there, it's switch port mode trunk for sure. Okay. Let's look at this. Show interface. Pick an interface, fast Ethernet 03. Let's do this. So we get a lot of information here. This is a tough read right here. Encapsulation ARPA, input rate, output queue. You can see the speeds that it's moving data on. Nothing's happening on these computers, so it wouldn't be very much. If you're having packet issues, which we haven't even began to talk about, this section in here is where you're going to find those kinds of things, even up here. So, but we haven't got to talk about that yet. Now, one thing I can see is it's a fast Ethernet, and let me see, the duplexes are there. Okay. Well, let's look at another similar command, same interface, but I'm going to add the word switch port at the very end of it. So show interfaces, fast Ethernet, and whatever, and then switch port. Now this is a lot easier to read, but it's got different information. It has the name on it, which can be altered. The switch port, whether it's up or down. Static access means that I issued the command switch port mode access, and then it's down. It's not being used right now. Trunking, if the trunking is applicable, this will have the VLAN that's been assigned to it and the native VLAN. If there's a voice VLAN assigned to it, then that'll show. We haven't talked about that yet. And if it's pruning, that's all. That's fantastic. Okay, so there's that command right there. All right, so what about trunking interfaces? One of the best commands that hides a little bit is show interface trunk. So this will, if one command shows you which interfaces are in trunking mode. And it also shows you what the native VLAN is, which if you're having a bunch of errors on your switch, this is fantastic right here. If you have VLANs that are not making it through to other switches, then maybe this is where you want to look for information. Okay, we haven't talked about pruning, but this is where you'll find VLANs that get pruned. Show VTP status. If you're looking for VLANs not making it to other switches, this is the first place to start. Make sure that you have your server and client set correctly, as in right here. Make sure that you've got your domains set correctly. And if there's a password, while the password doesn't show in here, just make sure you edit that and make sure that's correct. Okay. Another thing that's important in the VTP status is the configuration revision. These numbers should all be the same. If they're not, it means at some point one of your switches with the lower configuration revision stopped receiving VTP information. Okay, that's an important number that a lot of times that we get skipped over. And these all the VTP versions should be the same in your network if you're using VTP at all. Doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2, don't use 1, but they all need to be the same. Okay, so let me see. Show VLAN. This is the last command that we're going to look at until we go look at a couple of other things. But the last command, show VLAN, is going to give you a lot of information right here. This will show you the same as show VLAN brief, but we're going to get a bunch of stuff down here. Now, we don't have a whole lot in this particular thing because I don't actually have much happening on the network. But if you had things moving around on the network, if it were a real network, then this section here would be pages and pages long with lots of traffic information going right there. Okay. So I'm going to switch to let's go to 3. I can see that with show VLAN brief, all of my ports are in VLAN 1. And not only that, but I'm also acquiring VLANs 100 through 500 via VTP, I think. But let's look at that to be sure. Indeed, we are. Now, I added switch 5 at the very end. It doesn't even have a host name on it yet, but let's do this. It's not getting the VLAN information from the other. So I do this, show VTP status. And I see that it is indeed a server, but it doesn't have a domain name. So let's go into global config and set it as a client. And set the domain. We'll check the VTP status again. And I see that already my configuration revision has gone up to 5, which it was the latest on switch 4, which was the hub. And I see that the domain name has changed. So I bet if I do this, show VLAN, I bet I'm going to see all my VLANs now. Indeed, I do. And they're all there. All right. Hopefully those are helpful. Use them, practice them, love them, learn them.